Well, what kind of a life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life in your comfort zone and not reaching people, or do you have a vision to serve humanity and other people? And if you have a vision to grow in your career, whether in your own company or just that next sales level or hit a target so you can get your bonus, or like become the spokesperson for Coca-Cola, like whoever, whatever it is, or to become famous, like all of those things, if you have a vision for that in your future, the thing that is holding you back from magnifying and amplifying your voice is your ability to command a stage, to get in front of people and confidently speak.
Welcome to another episode of Speaking of Success. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Allison Graham. Allison is a renowned coach, author, and keynote speaker, specializing in resilience mindset, emotional intelligence, and problem solving for the human experience. Allison has inspired countless individuals and organizations to rethink stress, enhance their resilience, and optimize performance. Allison's latest book, Take Back Your Weekends, Stress Less, Do More, and Be Happier, is making waves for its practical advice and transformative impact. Today, we'll dive into the art of public speaking and explore how it has significantly benefited Allison's personal and professional. Allison, welcome. Really great to have you here.
Awesome to be with you. So, an important conversation to talk about speaking and how it can accelerate your career. Excited about it.
Yes, we definitely think so. So I thought maybe a good place to always start is to maybe take you back in time a little bit. And if you could share a bit of your story about how did you first get into speaking, not necessarily jumping on a stage, but where did your speaking start?
Well, it very much from a professional perspective, I was in the media, so I was a columnist. And I started getting asked to MC events. And the problem was I was so afraid of speaking that it was such like a horrible experience, both for myself and for the audience. And that really was my first foray into public speaking. And I had embarrassed myself so many times on stage as an MC. First of all, I had no idea why they kept asking me. And I had a really big, important event. And that was the moment everything changed for me because I was so prepared. I was focused on the audience, not on myself, and had practiced so many times that I got up there and I nailed it. And that changed my life. That shifted where I was going in my trajectory.
Yeah. Oh, so I definitely want to open that up a little bit, but first let's talk about MCing because I kind of started the other way. So I mean, I have many speaking experiences, but then I was doing like on stage stuff, and then somebody asked me to do the MC. It is a whole different ball game being the MC. It is hard. So I have ultimate respect for you to have started with MCing. So like, can you share a bit about like how you dealt with nerves, how you dealt with just going through that process? Because I think for anybody listening, it's always good to hear that we're all the same. We all struggle. So what was that like as a beginner back then?
So this might be TMI, but I used to go into the bathroom and of course my tummy was all upset and I'd be like throwing out, like, it was awful. And I would be texting or calling my mom and my brother and be like, what have I done? Why am I doing this? Like, it's just awful, right? And they were like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you keep doing this to yourself? Like, stop it. And so I started speaking publicly or professionally, like paid to speak in 2006. In 2012, I was still doing the freaking out in the bathroom before I went on stage thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's a process.
that's a long time. And my emceeing work started, became a columnist in 2003, so 2003. So that's how long it took me to get to a point where I actually loved going on stage. So
Yeah.
people are freaking out. People were paying me thousands of dollars to speak, and I was freaking out in the bathroom that I had to go on stage.
Yeah.
So you can do it too. But, there were a few things, like, I guess, so you had many questions, but one, how did I overcome the fear of public speaking? First of all, I realized that excitement and nerves are the exact same physiological response. And so it's just what story do we put around it? The next thing, so then I stopped resisting the energy of that. Second thing is I stopped worrying about the crowd as a whole, and I thought, who is the one person in this audience who needs to hear something that I am going to say that will impact their lives? Another trick, I needed a lot, just for the record. So so I focused on that one person. The other thing, and I did this when I was really nervous about networking as well, is that when I walked through the door, it no longer became about me. It was about how do we, you know, go through me to serve others. And when I started stop worrying about like, do I look okay? You know, what are people thinking about me on stage? Am I going to forget what I say? By the way, and I have, you know, forgotten what I was supposed to say, so we can talk about that too. But that shift in perspective of nobody's trying to judge me, they're trying to better themselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, there are people who are sitting there judging you, but those aren't your people. The people who you're there to hear from you, that's who you want to focus on, serving them and not worrying about yourself. So that was a
It's
big piece.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
such good advice. I think yeah, there's this people don't realize sometimes that there's this enormous gap between what's in your head and what's in the audience's head, and the audiences kind of just care about themselves and what they're doing and what they're getting out of it. And yeah, it's nice that you're up there on the stage helping them and doing stuff, but they're not worried about what's going on with you. Like it's and I think for me, like, and you said it so lovely, but I think it's that idea of like, yeah, instead of being very internal and thinking, oh, who am I to do this, and I'm nervous and my mouth's going dry and all that kind of stuff, but externalize like the audience. Why is it cool that I'm doing this? Who am I helping? What's happening? Like, I think that's, yeah, it's definitely a pivotal change that
Yes.
then, yeah, slowly over time can help.
Yes. Well, and even in the moment, it's like because when we get nervous and like I please know, like I used to have a cracking voice because I would forget to breathe, bright red, and goodness knows what I would ever say, right? And I remember one time because I was also involved in politics, so that and I was young and blonde. So the old white guys would all put me up on stage because it looked better, right? I think that's the answer to why did they keep putting me up there. And I remember once there was this really cute guy who I just had the biggest crush on, and I was going up and I saw his face at the front of the crowd, and he just looked and he turned bright red for me. And he's like, "Oh gosh, please not her again." And I was like the most embarrassing moment, I swear, of my speaking career. But anyway, it was okay. It came along. But what I realized is that when you're uncomfortable, what it does is it makes other people
Yeah,
uncomfortable. And the more comfort you can find up there and just soaking in, like, we're having a conversation. And if you see any of my speaking reel, you're going to see it's like I'm just up there like you and I are having a chit chat.
yeah,
There just happen to be 300 people in a room.
yeah,
And when you can do that, then it feels comfortable for everybody and it'll take the pressure off. Because if you and I were sitting down and we're just having a drink and enjoying ourselves, we're not going to forget what we're going to say. We're not going to be in our head about what we're going to say. We're going to have a sense of maybe the story we're going to tell or something like that. But really looking that each one of those people is just your best friend who you're trying to help.
yeah.
And that really helped shift the thinking for me.
Yeah, I love the reframe because I always think that like it takes the audience a really long time to know something's wrong. But as a speaker, you know, even before the last sentence has come tumbling out your mouth that something's, yeah, I've forgotten what I'm going to say. Or, and I love the idea of seeing it as a conversation because when you think of, okay, you and I just having a conversation over coffee in a cafe, it's totally okay for me to pause for 5 seconds because I'm thinking like, what did I want to say? That doesn't seem weird, but when you're on a stage, it feels like that's the last thing that can possibly happen. But actually, it's okay to go quiet for a couple of seconds and then continue. So I think
Yes.
it's a great reframe. Tom here. This is a brand new YouTube channel. It would help me so much if you could subscribe and help me spread the word. You're amazing.
Well, and you can also just say to the audience, "Wait a second, where was I? I forgot
Yeah.
my" like, people know.
Yeah.
But I think when people know that there's a problem is when your voice goes up
Yeah.
and you crack, and that is about not controlling your breath.
Yeah.
And so it's better when you start to feel that, taking that deep breath and oxygenating your brain, your lungs, your whole system,
Yeah.
because that's the thing that makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah. So if, because I always think every speaker has their tell of being nervous. Mine's my mouth goes really dry,
Yeah.
but like if for example, like that, okay, my breathing can trip me up. Do you have any like pre-talking things that you do to help with that, or it's just a process of it got better over time?
Just try. I always think there are three conversations you're having, right? The one that's coming out of your mouth, the one you're thinking about having, and then I don't know what the third one is. There are two. The one in the head, the one you're giving, and the one they're hearing,
Yeah.
right? And so it's holding the framework in the back of your mind of what you're trying to say, but not latching onto it. So a lot of speakers actually end up memorizing their work.
Yeah.
And I, I don't know. There's there's differing opinions on this. Some people, it is so authentic for you, go for it. And there are other people who, when you do it, you worry more about the words that you're supposed to say
Yeah.
rather than the concept you're trying to communicate. And for me, if you practice a lot, then I can say the exact same thing. Like right now, I know what my opening of my speech is, right? Boom, 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 boom. I could give it any moment. And I practice it while I'm driving to the speech. Generally is when I do a lot of my practicing. But that obsession with like, I have to say it exactly right will trip a lot of people up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I see that.
So
Go on. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, because you would actually ask me about the breathing and everything. Like it's about, so I know the breath will come up, and that's where it's like I try to pull in my gut and try to remember throughout. So that's part of the conversation that's going on in the back of the mind. It's not just what you're about to say, but it's how are you physically handling yourself on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think going back to the, do you memorize? How much do you practice? Do you not do anything? Like, I mean, I've definitely seen the full gambit from people who will memorize word for word a 3,000 word script. And yeah, I've seen many people trip up over that, because if you lose where you are or you forget that, it unravels really quickly. And I definitely, and yeah, I've seen like there are a handful of people. I know the guy who, I worked for Prezi for 10 years, and the guy who created Prezi, he would literally decide in the taxi on the way to the conference, what am I going to talk about? And
Yeah.
there was zero, but he could just do it, and that was his comfort space. But I think, like, I've definitely seen for most people, like you say, you need the framework or the flow or the 8 things I want to talk about, but there's a flexibility of, yeah, I may say that differently every time, but I get the main points across. And I think that's definitely a good place to get to.
Well, I remember I was working with one of the media person, and we were sharing a stage at a conference, and she we had a big conversation about this, and she was on TV a lot, so she was used to reading from a teleprompter, and she used to read a speech word for word, prepared. That was her world.
Yeah.
And somebody came up to her after and said, if I wanted to watch you read something, I would watch the news and not spend money on coming to an event. And she was like, because they're here to hear me speak and have a conversation and
Yeah.
answer questions. And the more confident you are in your delivery of your message, like I have so much content that if you need, I could do the back of the taxi cab thing, but I realize there needs to be a balance between discipline on stage and obsession of craft on stage. Like, I mean, there's a different variations, but I think there should be some discipline in terms of where's the roadmap, where are you going to go, what do you want your audience to do, think, feel differently based on hearing you speak. And if you know that and you serve to that,
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah. Great advice. So I'm going to take you back to something you said earlier about at the very beginning. I think it was 2006, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you had suddenly a big event that was a bit of a pivotal moment and you had to really prepare for it. So would you say that's like the moment where you started to understand that speaking is going to be a much bigger thing, or the importance of it maybe?
Yes. So a couple things that happened. Number one, I was in the media, so a lot of the speaking I was doing was for free and out of the goodness of my heart, and I didn't know it was actually an industry. But this particular event was in our 9,000 in our the city I lived in. There are 9,000, like a hockey rink, right, with 9,000 seats.
Wow.
And there weren't all 9,000 people, but what we did was the rink was covered for a black tie gala. And when I got up there, and I knew it was the who's who of who were the people, and I didn't want to have my voice crack. And the thing that resonated for me in that moment is as I was speaking, I could hear my voice reverberate throughout the whole stadium, the 9,000 person stadium. And it was such a comfort. And all because I was having the back of the mind, conversation going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is cool. Not from an ego perspective, but because we raised so much money.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of how well I did after having so many botches, right, over the years. And one of my favorite people, big philanthropist, came up to me on the dance floor and he said, "That was good." And I'm like, "Oh, finally, eh?" He's like, "Yes." And he said, "I think you have a future in speaking." And I laughed and I said, "Yeah, if only I could make a living doing that." And he looked at me and he went, "Oh, you don't even know." And that was it. That was the conversation. And I figured out that there's this whole world that I can open up to. But like in that moment, it was like because I took the eyes off myself, because I was prepared, did the hard work, uh, I was able to serve a group and be seen as someone who would then get invited to speak and have some credibility in the marketplace. And eventually they had me run for political office. And that was why. But it was only because I took my eyes off myself. And one of the things I think when people are thinking about speaking is we tend to think it's a lot about ourselves. And of course, I'm telling a lot of stories about how I got started and all of that. But your story only matters to the base that it to the extent that it helps somebody else.
Yeah.
It's not about what you went through, it's so that they can see themselves in what you went through and figure out how to get through it themselves. And so if you're doing some sort of a motivational speak, which is different if you're speaking for a corporate where you've got to present that big sales meeting and all the same principles apply, but nobody cares about you. They care about the message and how it resonates for them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So what do you think, if we move towards like the impact that starting to get comfortable as a speaker had on you, what are the kind of things that you've seen that without that skill, how would have your life been different?
Scale, reach, people who, the notes that I get that I have in my, memory box, right?
Yeah.
Randomly, I heard you speak 3 months ago and this happened. Every time you make a sale, you've got to think like if you're serving somebody, like even when you were at Prezi, right? Every time you help somebody put together a presentation or they use that technology and they were able to wow their audience even better,
Yeah.
the ripple effect of that was only possible because you did what you did.
Yeah.
And so speaking gives you an amplification of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like you've mentioned two things which are connected, which I think are super important as well. Is one, you have a memory box of things that people have said. And you also said there was the person after the big stadium who came and said, you did amazing and you should do this as a full-time gig. And I think as speakers, or even if you're not going to be stage speaking, but you're just going to talk inside your own company, is take the affirmations and the comments and use them. Because I'm English, so like sometimes we're like, oh no, I can't take a compliment, or like, but actually I think it's such a huge part of the journey to take that on board and help you get to the next stage. So I love the fact that you have the memory box. I think that's such a great thing.
The memory box that I don't have, and I'm really had to learn this, were the bad comments.
Yeah.
Because I think speakers have a harder time getting hooked and allowing those things to exist without their letting it derail them. So I remember once I had a big gig. It was a very big gig. I had to do the same speech 5 times in a day and a half, and I got paid very handsomely for it, and I was thrilled. Big firm, and they were rotating all their partners and their accountants through it.
Yeah.
And I heard afterwards that the head honcho wasn't very happy. And I was horrified to the point where I literally didn't sell my speaking and was afraid to get on stages for like 6 months, level horrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I found out, turns out he was pissed that there was no stage because I use flip charts and the people at the back of the room was so overpacked that he couldn't see what I was writing on the flip chart.
Yeah.
So you can hear something and it is so much easier to control, like soak in the negative and believe that. So I really think you have to look at get rid of the top 15%, get rid of the bottom 15%,
Yeah.
and hang out in the middle and own that all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like I one of the people I heard talk about this years ago was Seth Godin, who's a bit of a,
Ah,
yeah, he's one of my, I love Seth Godin, but like he always says, you know, like when he was writing lots of books and he said like, I had to stop looking at the reviews because, you know, there's always going to be negative ones and you have to be able to say, that's okay, maybe it's not for you. So I think like it's impossible to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. And I think you said it in the best possible way that like, yeah, ignore the bottom and top 10%. And actually, if you can focus on the masses and they're happy with what you're doing, you're in an amazing place. So I think it's,
I think it's actually funny enough, Seth was speaking at that same conference.
lovely.
So yay, what a funny time to bring him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a classy guy. He's so
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. There should be people like Seth running the world. I'm utterly
You
convinced.
think? Wouldn't that be lovely? Except he knows better. He'd be like, I don't want to
Yeah,
get into
yeah,
that,
yeah.
I'm sure.
But yeah,
So no,
he's
it's really yeah. He think of the impact he's made. Do you
yeah.
imagine? Like, wow.
Yeah, and he's a guy. Oh, this is going to become the Seth podcast, but like you know, when you think about this, is a guy who could have easily been a billionaire with the stuff that he's done, and yeah, that's not the route that he chose. It was about how can I make good change happen? How can I make a difference? How can I, you know, help as many people as I can? Like, yes, he did well, and yes, he had lots of success, but like, yeah, I don't know. He's definitely a good role model to look to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So I'm imagining somebody listening to this conversation who's maybe at the beginning of their career or you know just decided I need to get better at this speaking thing. What advice would you have for people who are just starting? What should they be doing?
Don't over analyze your performance. And what I mean by that is this. The thing I was going to say earlier, but I was a different context, was there are always 3 speeches we give. There's the one we expect to give, the one we deliver, and the one we give on the way home to our steering wheel. And that steering wheel conversation generally can get pretty, especially when I didn't have any confidence, I would get obsessed about that. And I would have like flashbacks like weeks later, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. The thing is, how it comes off from the audience's perspective is generally different than how it comes off in our head.
Cool.
And so just give yourself the space and the grace to get better. I am so glad that all of those incredibly embarrassing moments that I had early in my career, and there were many, did not keep me for whatever reason of getting back up there and keep going. And
Yeah.
all those people, like I remember one of the guys used to be the head of the hospital foundation, and he's like, let me get this straight. Like, you earn your living speaking? Like, he was shocked, right? He's like, this can't be true because they're going to remember. And you know what? It was that bad. And that's okay. But the thing is, you're gonna grow, and I don't do, like 99% of my speeches are not even none of those people will ever be in the room,
Yeah.
right? Like, they'll hear about me out on social media or in the TV or whatever. They're never gonna be the people who I'm serving. Go find your people and serve them and love them.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no way that you can go from never doing it before to speaking up in a meeting, presenting to your boss, or stepping on a stage without you're never going to do your best job the first time. So
Never.
it's definitely experience. And I love the analogy of the conversation with the car steering wheel, because I totally know that feeling. And I think, like, one of the lessons that I learned was, actually, the thing that magnifies it is you have this like huge adrenaline ramp up to when you're going to do a talk. And normally half an hour after you've finished, or an hour after you've finished, you have this crash. Like, you feel super tired. You feel, it really, you feel like what that took out of you to go do that thing. And that's when you have the horrible conversation with yourself, when you're
That's
tired
right.
and fatigued and at your lowest ebb. And like, it took me a long time to figure out that, like, yeah, don't do the reverse engineering until the next day. Like,
Yeah.
it's
But it's interesting that we don't talk enough about that crash. So
yeah,
I'm really glad you brought it up, because here's the like, I have had this conversation with many of my speakers. And if you are really anxiety driven before you get on stage, you're going to have this high, and then you're going to do it and it's going to feel great. And then everybody's going to go, and you're going to go back to your hotel room
yeah,
or back to your office, and everything's going back to normal. And that's when the crash happens.
yeah,
And so where I've really feeling blessed right now is I'm not getting that big adrenaline rush anymore.
yeah.
And so that actually is like, I'm going on stage is just a thing I'm doing in my day. And then I get a full work day in after,
Nice. Yeah.
right? Like, there's no big letdown, but the letdown is usually in direct proportion to the high.
Such a
And
good
so if you can
yeah,
pull the two together and even it out, speaking for you won't be so exhausting.
yeah,
Like, one of my coaching clients, she happens to be a speaker and we're working on different things, but she'll freak out 10 days before a meeting, like a keynote, and she's getting paid and I'm like, wow, that means your keynote is an hour plus 10 days of anxiety.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a lot.
That's a
So
big
then it's like this huge letdown. So something to consider.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, any other advice for
Oh, it
beginners?
wouldn't stop. I love this stuff. But, just no, get out there and do it and practice. And it's okay if you suck. Like, it is helpful to watch game day tape, like rewatch yourself.
Yeah,
Uh, having, you know, even for your sales meetings, like
yeah,
every meeting you have, I record as best I can, right?
yeah,
To try to go and go, okay, how could I have said that better? But without from a lens of awful judgment, from a lens of how do I continue to improve and serve even better.
yeah, definitely. So why, let's, I want to give you some time in a minute to talk about your stuff as we wrap up, but let's finish with, let's go back to the impact, because I can imagine somebody listening thinking, it sounds like a lot of stress. So, like, why should somebody care about speaking? What are they, if they're going to invest some time and some effort and some tough times as they, go through that process? How can we sum up what they're going to get out of it?
Well, what kind of a life do you want to live? Do you want to live a life in your comfort zone and not reaching people, or do you have a vision to serve humanity and other people? And if you have a vision to grow in your career, whether in your own company or just that next sales level or hit a target so you can get your bonus, or like become the spokesperson for Coca-Cola, like whoever, whatever it is, or to become famous, like all of those things. If you have a vision for that in your future, the thing that is holding you back from magnifying and amplifying your voice is your ability to command a stage, to get in front of people and confidently speak. And so if that's the thing, we got to solve one small, simple problem at a time and find that solution. So, and you've got to just keep inching forward, inching forward, inching forward on that comfort zone so that you can open it up so that you can actually live the life you envision. Because I think that, in my coaching practice, I end up with a lot of people who are later on in their life, they've done everything right, they've had their success, and they've got a lot of regret because they had a vision for their life and they weren't willing to do the stuff that needed to be done to take it.
Mic
That's
drop.
why.
You can drop the mic now. That was
My
yeah,
God.
fantastic. 100% agree with you. So, thank you. Where can people connect with you? Where can they read your book? Where can they
Uh,
listen to some of the stuff that you talk about? Where should they go?
well, come to AllisonGraham.com. I send out a weekly email, and on LinkedIn is probably my most active, and YouTube. So I'm out there as everyone, likes to be out there, but I'd love to connect with you and definitely like tell them, like, if you connect with me, say, "Hey, I listened to or read your
Yeah,
book or whatever." And then I'll know where they came from too. So yeah, I'll definitely excited for people to have a future in front of people, It's a
yeah,
scary thing,
yeah.
but
Scary,
it's worth
but
it.
there's so many superpowers that it gives you. I think
Right?
it's worth the effort. That's yeah.
It is totally worth the effort. It's worth, and it's not even pain and suffering, although my younger self would have called it that. It is it is totally worth it because you can have impact and you never know where it's gonna lead. You do not know. You're only one connection away from something magnificent happening in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you never know who's in the audience. I think for me, like, when I was working at Prezi and I would tell the Prezi origin story, and the second co-founder of Prezi was sat in the audience of the guy who created Prezi, and that's how they met. So they met through a talk. And so you just like, you never know what's going to happen when even if it's 5, 10, 15 people, it doesn't have to be thousands of people, but you never know who's in that room and what that might open up for your life. So it's
Do you know I owe my entire media career to stepping on stage and then feeling embarrassed?
okay.
You're right. You never know how it is. So I was asked to MC for free the Canadian Club of London, right? Our lunch, and we had one of the political candidates who was there. And the columnist, for the people Carol Kehoe, came up to me after. She goes, "You are an enigma." She says, "I don't understand you." She's like, "You work here, you look like this." Because I was young and just sort of full of fashion and all that, I guess, in a room full of old white guys, right? And very, like, you got to think 2002 at this point,
Yeah.
right? And she's like, "That's incredible. I want to interview you." I ended up taking over her column when she resigned.
Wow.
And it never would have happened if I hadn't gotten up there and was freaking out and but you're right. And it's like little steps,
Yeah.
little steps.
Yeah.
See, this is important work you're doing. Hmm?
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I believe it. So, all that remains is to say thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and experience. There is an enormous amount for people in this interview. So, I am 100% sure that it's going to help people on their
Thank
journey.
you.
So, thank you so much.